It's been called the home of American music and country's most famous stage. Every year, hundreds of thousands of people travel across town or around the world to the Grand Ole Opry to see entertainment icons like Loretta Lynn, Dolly Parton, Carrie Underwood, and Brad Paisley perform live at the Grand Ole Opry. It began on the night of November 28, 1925, when an announcer on Nashville radio station WSM introduced fiddle player Uncle Jimmy Thompson as the first new performer on a new show called the WSM Barn Dance. The Opry has had 6 homes throughout its 90-plus years. The most recent move occurred on Friday, March 15, 1974, when the Opry said goodbye to the Ramen Auditorium to take up new residence at the newly built Grand Ole Opry House. For over 4,600 and counting consecutive Saturday nights, the Grand Ole Opry has rung out across the airwaves as the world's longest-running radio show. And now, over 90 years later, thanks to its dedicated staff and loyal fans, the Opry has launched countless country music careers and led their way for Nashville to become Music City.
What qualifies an artist to become a member or perform on the Opry stage?
Good question. It's kind of a mysterious answer.
Okay.
So for one, Carrie Underwood's a good example.
Yes.
She's very committed to the Opry. She comes and she plays the Opry because she wants to be here. She could be anywhere out on the road, making tons and tons and tons of money. Instead, she wants to be here a lot of weekends throughout the year. So commitment is really a big thing. The Opry recognizes when somebody's committed to it, and then they're committed to them too. And really, it's just a relationship.
Yeah.
It was, if you think of it as a radio show, think of the history of the Opry. There used to be an amount of shows you had to commit to a year. So it was 26 Saturday nights a year at one point. So you had to put in time because you were basically a cast of a show.
Yeah.
You were part of this show. You were in the cast. You know, TV wasn't a thing, so you were the cast of the show. Now it's an honor. So the Opry began in 1925, the longest running radio show in history. And a lot of people don't realize it's a radio show, but it is. We seat 4,400 people in here. It fills up all the time, and that's nothing compared to the people that can hear us out in Radio Land. We're on 650 AM WSM, and that actually reaches 38 states and parts of Canada.
Wow.
So it goes far, far. It's an AM station, but it goes far out.
Yeah.
It's grown a lot since 1925. It started, this is actually the 6th home of the Grand Ole Opry. It started out as the barn dance, that's what they called it, and having a live radio show was like a new, unique thing, and people were like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. So they started wanting to watch it be broadcast. They wanted to see it live, and so not only was there an audience out in Radio Land, but there were people sitting there watching, so they grew into a bigger venue and a bigger venue and a bigger venue until they ended up at the Ramen, and they were there for a number of years. The Ramen Auditorium is one of our most famous venues, and then this was built in 1974. It's about double the size of the Ramen. We needed to expand. We have larger dressing rooms and a bigger backstage for the artists. They even have their own mailbox here. If you're a member, you have your own mailbox. We have a working post office, and we've got all these mailboxes numbered backstage, and so they come in sometimes in the middle of tours during the day. Somebody will come in, a star will come in to check their mail. And the tour groups are like,
wait,
is this happening? Like, are they standing right there? We're like, oh, that's real. You're at the Opry. Anything can really happen. So it's really expanded a lot since then and grown in, and this has been our longest running home right here at the Grand Ole Opry House. So I am the head of the Backstage Tour department. So the fun part is that so many people want to come see the Grand Ole Opry. We've had to develop all kinds of new methods to have enough capacity to get people in here. We are set up to do 75 people every 15 minutes. After a show, we'll take 240 people back all at one time. Before the show, we have a really fancy tour. It's a little more expensive, it's a little fancy, but we take people back while the artists are back there. They walk around small little groups, and they end up on the side of the stage, and they're standing there when the curtain rises and the show begins. So the physical stage is really neat because we have this beautiful wooden stage. Actually, if you look over there, we can expand the stage. The little cobblestones stop, and where it turns wooden, we can actually raise that up to be the same level as the stage, or we can sink it down as an orchestra pit. But the coolest part of the stage is the circle in the center of the stage. That's like the holy grail of country music. It's literally country music's mecca to stand on that circle. And that circle was taken from the 1951 stage of the Ramen. It was taken from a specific spot on the stage where they knew a lot of people had passed by. They want to preserve part of the Ramen stage, and they put it right here in the middle of our updated stage, and that circle, everybody, you know, it's kind of a metaphor. The circle can't be broken. Like when people make their debut, the fact that they're getting to stand on that circle, that's a lot of tears. You know, the first time you play the Opry celebrates you, and they usually there's flowers and cake and all this stuff in the dressing rooms because, oh my gosh, congrats, you get to make your debut. They stand on that circle, and a lot of times people just are overwhelmed with emotions. The Opry is sort of the heart of Nashville. It really is. Every sign entering Davidson County, which is Nashville, says home of the Grand Ole Opry. So we are Nashville, you know. This is when people say, I'm going on vacation to Nashville, they're gonna come here. You know, we try to really be a big part in the community. We have been on broadcast on television multiple times throughout. We used to have something on GAC and things like that, but right now we've actually launched our very own television network. So Circle TV, and that's gonna have an online streaming component to that. So if somebody, you know, if somebody's coming up wanting to work in the music industry, they need to know what this is and they need to appreciate this. Because if you go out to get a job and you're not well versed on the Opry, you know, you never know when that could come up, and you just need to know its importance. I also think if you're someone that wants to get a job in the music industry, it takes a lot of hard work, and it takes a lot of stepping in entry level and earning those stripes. You really just have to be willing to come in and do a little grunt work. And then the harder you work and the more positive you are to help, that's the best advice I can give anybody. The people that have succeeded the most here are the ones that smile a lot and say absolutely. Something about the Opry, it's a magical little recipe that they have to remain relevant, and also because it just is the Opry, as they try to have a legend and a newcomer and a superstar on every show. 10 to 12 acts every show. It is a radio show, so I always think if you're listening to the radio, the disc jockey doesn't just pop in a CD and let it play all the way through 12 songs and then come to the next. They have multiple artists, so everybody sings 3 or 4 songs, 2 or 3 songs, and then they move on because it's a radio show. So they're able to really bridge a lot of gaps. So it's not just being a member of something, it really is a family.
I bet they feel at home a lot when they come here.
They do.
Probably
it's casual backstage because of that.
I can imagine running around to all these different venues, and then they come home here and they're like, I'm home.
They do. A lot of them have their favorite dressing rooms. They want to go in there. A lot of times they're running around eating popcorn. They don't even practice a lot before they come out. They come out and play. Our green room, we actually call it the family room because it's like a living room in the house. People want to hang out in there and see each other and eat snacks.
Like a home field advantage.
It is.
Football night,
it's like home field.
You're home.
That's perfect.
Playing your best.
Home field. Yep.
That's so
it
sweet.
is. Hopefully that was helpful.
Yeah,
this
is
fun. I love
the
energy and I really want to. Now
you
I'm like, I want to come to a show.
Yeah, you gotta come check it out.
It's so amazing. So thank you for sharing all about that.
Thank you for hanging out with me for a little while. Let me talk about it.
My daddy loved the Grand Ole Opry, so we had to listen to it back home, and me dreaming of being on it. And then I just remember that being special. But then the night that I actually became a member, after I was working with the Porter Wagner show, and got to actually be a member 50 years ago this year, it was one of the highlights of my whole life because it was a true dream of mine. And I just wish Mom and Daddy could be here tonight, but I think they are.
Today, the magic continues at the Opry with artists like Randy Travis, Alan Jackson, Vince Gill, Martina McBride, and Reba McEntire performing over 6,000 songs every year. And while 4,400 country music fans still fill the Opry House every Saturday night, millions more tune into Opry broadcasts through their mobile app, SiriusXM satellite radio, Nashville 650 AM WSM, and the Opry website. Now having welcomed 200 members throughout its history, the Opry is home to some of country music's all-time greats. From Hank Williams and Patsy Cline to Garth Brooks, who says, the Grand Ole Opry is the pinnacle of what country artists do. Nothing will ever match being a member of the Grand Ole Opry. I'm Caroline. Until next time, have a good day, everyone.